Alright, welcome back to Happy Little No Trees. Today we're going to get in the weeds of film stock design in the new Photochemist film stock designer part of the plugin. Now I've done some other videos breaking down the different modules of Photochemist, but today we're going to look at making your own stocks. So you can see I've already given you some presets that exist. We can click around, you can see how those affect the image. It does do some effects to your printer lights and various other things. But at the end of the day, these words and names to what these things mean, I gave them names as I was developing them. I don't even know if landscape less red is a real thing. But we're just clicked around. Now we've randomized a lot of our settings, and we can talk about custom film stock design and what's going on in the Photochemist. So if we scroll down and we shut off, when you look at your list of modules in Photochemist, down here at the bottom is negative film stock design, oops, not halation, and print film stock design. Both of them have the exact same controls, and both of them are set up to do and math function-wise separately, because the process is repeated for the print, but we're using the same kind of inputs. In the system, what's going on is our input color is hitting a mathematical equation to represent the relationship of turning silver halide in a film stock into metallic silver. The metallic silver is what reacts in the development process to make the dye. That is then the negative film stock that you push light through. So there is a variety of steps. We need to know how, when we look at a film stock, and you can see this if you bring up data sheets, they have, Kodak usually has data sheets that talk about the film sensitivity, what wavelengths of light, and that is this silver sensitivity set of controls. And what we have in there, we have, if we look at in here, there's red peak, we have one for each layer. And these are the same controls for each layer. There is a global control, so like if you set it and you want to make a tweak to all of them at the same time, you can. And then there is red peak, red sigma, and red spectral height. So we think about it, you can think about it like a Gaussian bell curve shape of the spectrum across an entire band of 360, a range of like 360 nanometers. And you think about it that width-wise, you're saying my peak of sensitivity is going to be at 645 nanometers. Now, my plan is to give us some view modes and diagnostic modes so we can see these curves. I have not coded that in. It's actually cumbersome to get that up and running without breaking everything, so that's coming. But right now we don't have it directly. It will be in a future update. But we can look at various things like how, let's see, negative dye developed. There we go. So negative dye developed density and negative dye is going to deal with what's going on in the math through our thing. So pure red is white, and black in these images is blacks. And so you can see right here, we're only affecting the red side of our image while also being able to see what's going on in our final image. And you can see when you increase red K, what's actually happening to the negative side of your film stock. And when we look at the negative developed density, and you can see where the sensitivity is. So from the incoming wavelengths of light, we're matching our input RGB is then being converted and matched to this spectral range of 360 plus nanometers from a very low number. And so there's controls, because you would rarely ever, like unless you want to go crazy, but it changes so where sensitivity of wavelength is, how wide that sensitivity is the narrow notch of wavelength that it's catching. And then this says how strong and high should that catch. So if it doesn't catch much at all, you're going to end up with a more bluish green output at the end, whereas now you're getting into finding a balance. So you got to think about, you're making a bell curve shape with these controls. And red K is a probabilistic multiplier. So there is some randomness that goes into it. It isn't just here is your curve, but there is a probabilistic randomizer that says maybe. And that's what's happening with red K. So when it's set to 1, it's saying that under these conditions, everything is going to be active. But as you drop it down, you can see not as much is active when you drop it down. And so you can kind of make some weird, interesting tweaks with the K because it's a probabilistic determination of probability that this is accurate. And you can do that for all of your colors in terms of designing your stock. And that is the first step to creating 3 maps of your image, the blue map, the red map, and the green map, to understand how dye is going to be formed. So where you see black on the image here in the different 3 frames of the colors versus pure, we got to think through if this was a black and white grayscale image. Where it's white, there is going to be less dye formed versus where there is black, there's going to be more dye formed. The next step is, the next set of controls in choosing and designing your film stock is the HT curves. And I'm still working out some of the math on this. This is one of the sticking points and hard points, even in developing this, is how do you create that filmic shape and curve. I'm still personally not 100% happy. You can think about various things. I feel like the controls don't function as strong as I'd like, and so I'm still working and tweaking some of this, and in the next iteration there might be a little bit of a change to how these function so the controls feel like you're actually doing something, and it's going to be helpful to be able to see that film curve on the screen. Gamma is just a kind of a midpoint pivot control of setting where the S curve and bends are. You have toe and shoulder strength controls to affect how it works down on the low end as well as how it works on the high end of the image, and then D-min and D-max kind of set like kind of thresholds for shaping that. But you got to think through that these controls are set up to fundamentally work in a way where it's drawing an S curve. You don't want to be too crazy with making adjustments in here. What I have found is in testing a 5% change from any of the presets is a good thing, whereas in silver sensitivity and the dye formation you can go a little crazy. And likewise, there is the controls for each of these, and then there is a global set as well, so you can affect all 3 at the same time to shape the gamma offset curve, which is all a little fun. Like, it's nice to be able to make like individualistic tweaks to each layer, but be able to crank on and just work all 3 at the same time. Really nice. And yes, the math on the idea is functioning in this version. And maybe it's just me, maybe it's perfectly fine, and I just need to try different things to see maybe this is the best version of how to do this. But I think I can improve this, but it currently works, and it does make really nice images. The next section in the negative film stock design is the dye colors. Now, if you've seen my work in previous videos with Thatcher's dye simulator, there is a lot of similarities to these controls. There's a lot of similarities to how it functions, but you got to imagine in his, it's running a spectral calculation to create its dyes 3 times over. This system is pretty much doing that in a hybridizated way, in which each layer is getting a 3-fold ramified change. And we're going to switch this over to the let's see, negative developed density. Is that what we want to see? No. Negative, that's the developed density. So this is our developed density maps. We're going to switch over to dye absorption maps. And so we're on the negative side if we switch to negative dye transmission. So these are the colors of our dyes that are being formed. And you can see here, I don't have global controls because I didn't really think that it needed that. But again, like dye sensitivity, you're creating a spectrum based design of across the waves of spectrum, what colors and at what percentages is this dye waveform being formed at from a spectrum point of view. Amplitude is kind of similar to spectral height. Baseline kind of just puts a baseline buffer on it, and you can shape each individual thing, each individual hue. I think I accidentally coded in. You can see when we switch to transmission, this is tied to our quick processing PowerPoint. So you can see when you change the color of your printer and you change the color of your dye, you're changing, in effect, the transmitted light. So when we break out our frames like this so you can see kind of how each thing is working, what you're seeing is this is the light that is going through that's transmitting through that layer, and this is the light that is going to then hit on the negative side to do the whole print side stock thing. So that's why when you switch to this and you go, there's my negative up in the top right corner, that's what's being absorbed. Here is what's being transmitted, and what you're seeing in the top right corner is actually your final print image, and so this is kind of where I like to think and make sure, see how the transmitted light is being affected on my image to where I can see the final. I can also see, the dye in and of itself as it's being affected and shaped, and that is what is creating that final negative image that's getting passed for the print side. And we can shape and make however we'd like. And that, my friends, is all three sets for the negative film stock side. And we've worked off of the presets Balance, Modern, Portrait, Optimize, and Landscape, and just fiddled with the controls from there to redesign our image to be this scan negative, creating this final print of footage. The prints film side is the same controls, same setup. So if you understand what's going on the other side, you'll understand what's going on there. And so our presets actually work for both the negative and print side at the same time. But you're affecting, like I said, we can look here and see our print dye transmission. So this is the light that is being transmitted through our print dye transmission and our absorption, and the very same diagnostics. I'm going to get curves to show up, but we can see here as we draw, oops, not that, negative print dye transmission. As we fiddle around with that, nope, I want to just see the final print. We're really shaping various aspects of how that film stock responds. We're looking at our scopes. We're checking how we're all shaping up. And now the trick is, when you're doing this, be mindful that you're viewing everything through this lens. So if you have any controls set in your film development section, or anything funny going on in your input condition that you fiddled with, say like an exposure boost, all that is going to affect how you think about what you're doing to your film stock. My recommendation is to make sure that these settings, if you're thinking about having spectral sharpening on in your negative development or turning it off, it will drive how you think about how you shape your film stock. And there's no getting around that. These things are all intertwined to a large degree, and that's what makes it somewhat tricky and somewhat hard, and it takes a lot of trial and error to really understand what is going on, what is this image that I'm making, and how is it shaping up to be everything that I want it to be. and to make the film stock that I want. So be mindful of that. I personally forget when I'm making tweaks down there. So it is really good to go through, make sure you're not developing anything in some weird way, that you're making those choices second. I mean, yeah, you can go back and forth and go, yeah, we're going to do this. And that's great. And that's going to be our image. Try it on different shots. Don't just be looking at one thing. Make sure things are going to match up the way you want it to when you're making these looks, so that they fit and they feel well, versus I made all this film stock adjustment and I had a bunch of weird stuff going on in my negative development, and if I turned all that negative development stuff off, I'd probably make different choices in terms of how my film stocks were designed. Because if bleach bypass was influencing my view on the negative side, I'm going to make different choices when I'm sliding things around, because my saturation's all off. Everything is a little bit different. It's tricky. It is very tricky, but I'm kind of liking this now. Or if my printer lights, this is a weird one too, because this is, I'm trying to balance and shape my image with all these controls, but my printer light power points are all off balance. So you can see if I reset them to 0, my projector light's all off balance. That's one of the hard parts about this, is that all the settings work together. You push a little on one side and you pull a little on the other side. They're going to intermingle. They're going to work together. And it takes a little time, because this is a way different way of look development, to think through all these nuances and to go, how can I get the image to where I want it to be, where it's going to look good every time. And there is about 170 controls. The film stock design does a lot of the heavy lifting to how all of the math flows, but your settings for film development and everything like that, if they're already set, it's going to affect how you shape the rest of your image when you're designing the film stock. It's tricky. It's hard, and I'm glad you stayed this long to see how things were developing. Try it on test images, play around with it, get a good feel for what it's doing, because at the end of the day, one small tweak is going to push your image in a way different way. And now if I go back and I'm fiddling with my film stock, I'm biased. I'm in a different place than I just was. So this is a long expose on how to design your own film stocks in Photochemist. It's a learning curve, and the only way to really get good at it is to really just start doing it. Anyways, have a great day. Happy Little Notary Day. Enjoy. Get your hands on this. Have fun. I'll see you in the next one.